Starting Baruch Hashem, a new Masechta, Maseches Menachos. Just to mention as a little bit of a preview, we'll start with a conceptual preview, and then we'll go to a short a preview that we need for the first Mishnah. Is that it's interesting that the word mincha, what does mincha mean?
Present.
It's a gift. Yaakov Avinu sent Esau, he said mincha. So why is mincha called a gift more than anything else? Why is it more of a gift? So just to mention, the Shem Shmuel's Yortzeit is tonight. Chavdalid Tevis is the Yom Shem Shmuel's Yortzeit. So Shem Shmuel mentions Dover Nifla Mahoid. He brings the really name of his father. The idea of a mincha, what's special about a mincha after we finish zvachim. Zvachim is animals. An animal represents an Adam. It's a living creature. It represents an Adam. But a mincha is not a living creature. It's a plant. Mincha comes from flour. So that's something which is a little called lower than Adam. Not always you can come and bring and elevate the lower parts of the Bria to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what that's why by Uma Sa'ilon they don't have mincha. Some we still learn in Masechet Zvachim. There's one of them. There's no mincha in a bama. In order to elevate a bama, you need to be a mincha. You have to be in a place where it has to be full gedusha to do it. So that's what the Shem Shmuel brings. He goes on to say why it's why Avraham Avinu was zoiche to mincha only after he conquered the Malachim with Alon Garichus. But just to take that same idea and bring it up to here, the Chinuch says that mincha, the Chinuch already, one of the Rishonim, tells us the same idea that a zevach is connected to Adam, but the mincha is connected to the mammon of the Adam. And we know that tzadikim chaviv alim mamoinim yoyser migufam. So as brought down as far in the idea is what? The reason is because the guf, of course you give it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who gave you it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to you. It's not yours. But when you give the moment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's a bigger gift. You're giving something which is, you have to elevate something which is not naturally belong to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why mincha is called mincha l'shematana, is bringing the kedusha to a place which not naturally belongs there. That's why you have mincha. So in mincha mincha is equivalent to the zevach, and especially specifically what we need for the first Mishnah, is the same way you have our 4 avodas, main avodas by the zevach. What are the 4 avodas of the zevach? Shechita, shechta, carbon. You have a kabbalah, right? You receive the blood. Then you have a haloi lacha. You walk to the mizbeach, and you have zriko. That's the 4 avodas that you have by a zevach. You have equivalent to that. You have 4 avodas by a mincha. What is connected to shechita is the kmitza. You take out the flour with the three middle fingers of the kohen. You take out the kmitza. That's number 1. Then you have the kabbalas. You have to put it into a kli. The kmitza needs to go into a kli. The only exception to that is in Yom Kippurim. That's when you have chafina on your hand. He doesn't necessarily put everything in the kli. And then, but they usually put it in the kli. You have horilocha, connected to locha is the same avodah. And then you have to you bring in the mizbeach, depends on which mincha. One easy one is agosha. You just touch with it the mizbeach. So you have the 4 avodas connected to the 4 avodas. So look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah also the Gemara is very, very parallel to the Masechet Zvachim. Very, very quick, very similar to what we saw over there. So look at the Mishnah. If you did Kmitza Shelo Yishma, which is exactly how Masechet Zvachim started, Ksheirus, it's kosher. Elo Shelo Olu Labaylin L'Shem Chayva. It says the only thing is, it doesn't Olu Labaylin L'Shem Chayva, which means the owner is not Yotzei De Chayva, the Mincha has to bring very similar, very equivalent to what we had by Zavach. When you do a Zavach Shelo Yishma, it is kosher. Shelo Labaylin L'Shem Chayva, the owner still is B'Chayv in the carbon. Chutz, get parallel to what we had in Masechet Zvachim, Minchas Choyte, Minchas Chanois. So Minchas Choyte is the Mincha of Kneged the Chatos, you have a Minchas Choyte. Choyte can bring a Mincha. Minchas Chanois is a Mincha of a Soito. So even though it is not Mamish a Chait, but
you can't have every chait brings a mincha. It's only certain chayos.
Right. The Rashi brings it over here.
Well, you have oil v'yar.
Right. As Rashi brings, going, you have to have oil v'yar. You have to have that concept of being able to bring different levels of chatos. So to his mikdash will be one example. When you have a chatos that comes there as a mincha, So that's a minchas choite. We're going to get to there. You don't have shemen, you don't have levoino, you don't have all the things you add to a regular mincha. You don't do that by minchas choite. Minchas choite is equivalent to a korban chatos. And by korban chatos, we know that shaloi lishma doesn't work. So it doesn't work. Now, by minchas choite, so we already mentioned in the Mesachas Vachi, the minchas choite is mivarer over. It's not considered to be a chatos. It's not mechaper, but it's mivarer over, and the Gemara is going to address it. Well, we know the source. We'll get to that. I think they're reading tomorrow's daf. But minchas kanais is also equivalent in this case for chatos. Says Mishnah, minchas choite u'minchas kanais shekontzon shaloi lishvon. He did kmitza shaloi lishvon. Nasan bekli v'holach v'hikter shaloi lishvon. And that, or it's either or he did the nesina bekli, which is the keneged kabbalah. Holach keneged oilocho. Hiktir, which means put in the mizbeach shaloi lishvon. Oy shaloi lishvon, oy lishvon shaloi lishvon. Meaning he did. So sorry. The first case he did all of them shaloi lishvon. Second case he did one of them lishvon, one of them shaloi lishvon. Or shaloi lishvon lishvon. He did the first one shaloi lishvon, the rest of them lishvon. And all these cases psulos. All possible. Keitza lishvon v'shaloi lishvon. The shem minchas choite is lishvon. Shem minchas tedava shaloi lishvon. What will be the case of shaloi lishvon v'lishvon? The shem minchas tedava, the shem minchas choite. Right? That is the whole case. So the Rashi brings over here, what we'll see later in the Gemara, that don't tell me, maybe Tfois Loshen Achron, Rashi doesn't say it, but maybe also Tfois Loshen Rishon. I don't know which Loshen to be Taifis. So maybe you'll tell me if I did Lishma v'Shaloi Lishma, so it works because you start Lishma. Tell me no, it's not good. And if I start Shaloi Lishma and Lishma, maybe it works because it's Tfois Loshen Achron. Take your last Loshen. So that's why I bring you both examples that any time within the carbon you have a Shaloi Lishma, within the Mincha Shaloi Lishma, it is possible. Okay, very good. Sog the Gemara. Lama lemitno elo litni v'loy olu l'shem choivo. Why it says the losh of the Mishnah is very, very similar to what we saw in the beginning of Zvachim, but it says ksheiros elo shalom l'shem choivo. Meaning, I'm just diminishing the what you're missing over here is only shalom l'shem choivo, but in general it is kosher. So it says, why you have to say that elo? Hakamash malan lebaylim u'dolay olu shuchayvo hamincha guvek sheiro. Mincha itself is kosher. Still kosher to the mincha. Similar to what we saw in the beginning of Sechet Zvachim. That doesn't show Yeshua, it's still kosher. The also the shinui.
What does ksheirus mean?
Ksher means you have to, he has all the din of, as well as going to tell us.
What did you accomplish? What does the was?
If it would say loyal shuchayvo, I would think that it means maybe
you can eat it. It's,
no, I'm saying it did not work. It's possible. So you know. No, but the point is, the Ella tells you that the only thing you have is shalom v'shuchayv. That's what I was going to tell you.
Again,
as much.
It says ksheirus.
I hear. So I wouldn't be mad.
Oh, I mean, it's not. If
right.
you said that, what?
Look at Losh Rashi. Miktani Ella Masha the kol dino kemincha ksheiro. Ella zebilvat. Meaning, I would think maybe ksher means that it has some kashrus to it. Elu shalom v'chavi means that there's nothing else but shalom v'chavi. Okay, I think that we discuss a little bit more into it in the details. I just don't remember, but that what is there any other nafkamino? But we want to be madgish. Everything else is kosher. My nafkamino says the Gemara vasu shinui kederova. You're not allowed to change it. Don't tell me. Then maybe you'll say it's kosher. But if you want to paisel it, you can paisel it. Maybe anyway, it doesn't work. So if I want to do it, I do it. If not. The Ella tells you no, it has to be done b'kashrus. This is what we saw in the Sechet Zvachim. Again, the basic without. Even though you did shchita shaloi lishma, you have to do the zrika lishma. Don't tell me, well, it's already anyway ruined. What do I care? Just do everything shaloi lishma. No, you have to continue doing it the right way. If I say masvar, if I say mikra, you learn from masvar, from a pasuk. If I say masvar, mishum de mishani bakolani lisha bevelezel. Because you did already one change, in other words, as we say in English, two wrongs don't make a right. Meaning, the carbon is still a carbon. I ruined one or the other.
It's not going to be Ola. I might as well say it doesn't matter anymore.
So the chiddush.
You're not going to accomplish anything.
Right. So maybe that goes back to your point. It's a ksheiro, meaning it's a good carbon. It just doesn't work for the Bailim. So the kashrus, the Rishkov has Zvachim, that there is two nikudas in a carbon. There's a carbon mitzat atzmai and the carbon what it affects. He has a whole yisoid, the Bektoiris, you don't have what it affects. It has only mitzat atzmai.
Yeah, but if you did the Zerika Eichel Shloishma, it should still be the carbon is good.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing.
But because I'm allowed to do Shloishma. Am I allowed to do Zerika Shloishma? I want to do it. So anyway, I did the shechita wrong, so just forget about it. So we're saying no. Because the carbon is kosher, don't change anything else. Even though, anyway, it won't work.
It's not enough.
Don't have care for the bailin, but it's have care for your chiyuv.
You shouldn't do it. But
yeah.
It's still kosher carbon.
Right. Is there any, is he over any, he's getting marks, not getting marks in there.
Right.
Right. So, first of all, it's a svar. You say makro, it's a pasuk. So you should do as you said, meaning you vowed, which is a neder, and then it says nedava. Says the Gemara, nedava, nederu, korli nedava. What is it? Kashenodart is a neder, nedava is a nedava. So is it a neder or nedava? We know these two different things. What's the difference between neder and nedava? Neder is the achrayus of the owner, and nedava is a donation. So by neder, it's something which a person says, I lie. I need to bring it. And then a dava means that the animal is kosher. So why are you calling neder and dava? Says the Gemara, and the so you neder. If you did it right, so it's a neder. If not, it's a dava, meaning that you don't have any obligation on you, but that carbon itself has kashrus. The base would be so the dava. You surely should in your book. Can you change a nedava? Right? You have to do it l'shem l'shwa. So even though it doesn't go to bailim, it still has the carbon. It goes back to the yisoid. There are two inyonim b'karbanis. One is the carbon itself, and one, how does it affect the owner? Says the Gemara now, Lei Mastis Loi Kab Shemin. The Chor of this mission is not Kab Shemin. The Tanya of Shemin Noimer, Kol Menachos, Sheniketzu Shol Yishmon, Ksherois, Ve'olu L'bayim L'Shem Choivo. So the Shemin now, if I do Mincha Shol Yishmon, meaning I'm not doing it for the right Mincha, it still works. Why? You can't compare mincha to zevach. What does it mean, shol yishma? Shol yishma means you're doing the mincha for the purpose of another mincha. So one example that we have over here is machvas Hashem macheshes. What's the difference between machvas and macheshes? Machvas means, even today's Hebrew, means a pan, and a macheshes means that it's roichish. It's more liquid. It's deeper, so it's like more of a pot. It's a pan and a pot. So there's two different menachos. There's a mincha on a pan, which is a little, it's drier, similar to a pancake, and then you have one which is more like it's a more liquid. So if you're doing machlas shemacheshes, maaseh amuchichim olel shum machlas. What do you mean? It's a joke. You're saying that you're giving a mincha of macheshes. No, it's not. Look around. You see right now, it's not a machlas. You see exactly what it is. You see it now, it's not a macheshes. Look at it. It's dry. So you say, no, I'm doing it Shalei Shema. What do you mean you're doing Shalei Shema? I'm doing it for when it's changing its actual physical element. Charev means dry with no oil and spices. Blula means it's with oil. You see that it's dry. So but Menachos, I can't really change it. I can't change the actual physical way it appears. So this is a preview. The Gemara is going to go into this sugya now for a whole daf and continue next daf. What is the yisoid that Rabbi Shimon telling us? By mincha, I can't really change it because they're very different. Mashayken by karbanis. When I'm doing asham l'shem oila, so changing its nature, the animal looks the same, the shechita looks the same. I can't see with your maisim that you're fooling around.
It's not going to be correct by every
right.
Because,
right.
The animals are different.
Right. So part of that discussion of the Gemara is going to start speaking about where do you have things that are different, where you don't have different. Side by zvachim, side by menachos. The Gemara is going to go on to equivalent all that. Says the Gemara, so the Gemara now is quoting what we're going to see later. Later in the sugyas, the Gemara is going to go on to explain Rabbi Shimon. What does Rabbi Shimon mean to say, and when do we say that Mincha Shol Yishma works, and when do we say Mincha Shol Yishma does not work? So one way is what Rav Ashi says. Rashi says there's a difference between if he says machvas l'shum macheshes, or he says minchas machvas l'shem minchas macheshes. What does it mean? As Rashi brings over here, Rashi says, in the look at the Umat Chanich Rashi, he says the metayis the kamon kiramin the Shimon dom reduch tachrisi. Shimon dom you have a steer of Shimon. Umetayis so Rashi da do omar Shimon olu boime areini koimitz minch machvas l'shem macheshes. The kivan de loy apka shmo the mincha doesn't mention the word mincha. El shmo de mono. Let's talk about the kli. Divrei ruach be'almanin. Say I'm doing a minchas machvas for macheshes, for the pot. The pot. How do Shimon be'alma the loyal look on the ikashmod the mincha? So Shimon, okay. So what is he saying? He's saying he disagrees with this concept. We're going to see more of it as we go forward. He says no. The fact that the ma'aseh meichichim oleo like Rabbanon, he agrees with Rabbanon. In Rabbanon our Mishnah, they say that I don't care that you could prove from your actions that something's changing. I don't care about that. He had in mind the same way you know. There was a dugma from what we have, when we know, for example, pigul. Person thinks he's going to eat it out of time. Doesn't matter if he ate it out of time, didn't eat it out of time. The machshava ruins it. So a person goes and says, "I'm doing this minchas machvas for minchas macheshes," even though the actions look different. I don't care. He's doing the wrong machshava. That's what Rabbanan agree. That's what Shimon agrees with that. So when does Shimon argue? Shimon argues when he says the words that don't make sense. He says, "I'm doing a minchas machvas. I'm doing this flour to be a pot." It just made up words. It doesn't mean you want to make a mincha. You want to have other kavanas that you could do. But just to say a name of a kli, that we're not saying. So according to that, what does Ravashi say? So Ravashi, okay, so our Mishnah is Rav Shimon is not arguing. Rabbi have different answers. Right? The Gemara is going to go on to explain a little bit the right here, and the next daf we'll see also more in length. Rav and Rav said, meaning so you see our Mishnah is Rav Shimon. Let's go through the answers. What does Rav say? Rav says there's a difference between Shinu Kodesh Shinu Bailim. When did Rav Shimon say that Moisei Mechichim Orleo Shinu Kodesh? He says, I'm doing a pan, and he's doing a pot. But if he's saying I'm doing for a different owner, you don't see anything in the Maisim. So that's why Shimon agrees, he ruins it. Shinu Baili. Shinu Baili means the wrong thought of the wrong owner. So we said the Gemara, so Akubishu, what you say, Shinu Kodesh, Shinu Baili, I'm Steve Shinu Kodesh, the Ketani. Sorry, it says the Gemara about Mastisi Shinu Kodesh. Our Mishnah is not Shinu Baili. Our Mishnah says that the Shinu works. You want to tell me that Shimon's Ilchor seems to not fit with our Mishnah. Why? Because Shimon said the Shinu does not work. No, Shimon agrees with the Mishnah about Shinu Baili. Our Mishnah is not talking about Shinu Baili. It's talking about Shinu Kodesh. How do we know that for the next part of the Mishnah? Because they thought it gets out of Lishwan, Mishal Lishwan. What was the case of Lishwan, Mishal Lishwan? It is the Shum Minchas Choitel, Shum Minchas Ledava. Two different Menachos. We're not talking about a different owner. So that's what that answer doesn't work. Comes Rav and says, what does Rav say? That when did Shimon come and tell us that my is when that it's oile, it's when you have a mincha for a mincha. Why? Because really my is lav davka, and you all learn from a pasuk. Rashi brings it over here. Rav in the bottom, you see the time that Shimon had olu because mincha machas Shimon chas v'ches b'shu dechtiv zoish teres a mincha. Torah achas the kol menachos. Not Naseh Mechichim Oleo. Naseh Mechichim Oleo is not, it's not lav davkas, because there's a special Gzas HaKosov. So the by Zevach, he agrees that it ruins it. So according to Reb Shimon, if he did a mincha, he said, I'm doing in my machshava, I want to do it for a shchita, which doesn't make any sense because he's doing a kibitza. But that's what he has in mind, he ruins it. But a mincha does not ruin it. Says the Gemara. So again, But our Mishnah talk about a mincha for mincha. The K'tan Shaloi Lishmon V'Lishmon. What is that? L'Shem mincha zedov, L'Shem mincha zchoite. And so you see, our Mishnah can't explain this way. So meaning, what is the more saying? Our Mishnah, does our Mishnah go according to Rav Shimon? So if you hold, like, we have three shittas in explaining Rav Shimon. We have the shita of Rav Ashi that says it depends if he said the word mincha or not. Here's the shita of Rabbah that says there's a difference if you're doing it l'shem l'shol shmo shel l'shem bayov. And the shita of Rabbah, there's a difference if you're doing it l'shem mincha l'shem zebach. So Rabbah and Rabbah doesn't work to explain our Mishnah this way. Rav Ashi could work. Doesn't make more sense. Okay. So now let's ask a steer Rav Shimon itself. That's what it says. The Gabe, the full pasuk is talk about the mincha. So it says yesh behem kechatos v'yesh behem kosher. Some we treat like a chatos, some we treat like kosher. Minchas choyter kechatos, as we mentioned the Mishnah, we treat like a chatos. The figure comes to shlo yishma psula kechatos because pasuk shlo yishma. Minchas the davar rei keosham. Figure comes to shlo yishma kshiro ukeosh right kshiro. It works like a asham that it's kosher. Liber the man domer and zvachim that holds that you don't treat a asham like a chatos. So if you do shlo yishma, it's still kosher. Ukeosham we learn more like asham. So the same way by Asham you say that it works but it doesn't work for the owner. So the Bnei Davar, he didn't fulfill your obligation. So clearly Rav Shimon says you have here you do say that doesn't work. You need to be quoted Rav Shimon before it says it does work. That's the answer we said before. So we don't know who's the owner. Which means we always look at Rashi. Rashi says the first white line, the bottom. We're comparing mincha l'zvachim with the chtiv. What apostle we just mentioned? I have once I learned from Zvachim the machshava Prisalis, so it should always be Prisal. Says the Gemara, it's a svar. What do you mean a svar? The pasuk tells you that you comparing mincha to Zvachim. Says the Gemara, they have Shimon Dorish Taimo the Crow. Shimon Lishitase. Shimon dashes time the crow. What does it mean to dash time the crow? I explained the reasoning of the pasuk. As Shimon Shkop famously explains, what's the difference between Rabbon and Reb Shimon? That's a big machlekes in called the philosophers of Talmud, if I want to call it that way. To what extent do I come to explain the Gemara? So Shimon Shkop Shita was that you have to explain the reasoning. So the difference between Reb Shimon and Reb Chaim. So Reb Chaim says, "Stay here." What says over here? Shimon tells you why does it stay over here. What's trying it? It gives you like the machshava behind it in Lomdus. So Reb Shimon Shkop, when he comes to explain his mahalach, he says, "What's the difference between Rabbon and Reb Shimon?" They both we explain the reasoning of the pasuk. He says, "Of course, everybody agrees you have to explain the reasoning of the pasuk." It's Loshan the Rambam. The Rambam is there's a mitzvah of an adam to go and darshan taimo as much as he can to explain the reasoning of the Torah. But the shaila is if your reasoning will change the halacha. According to Rabbanan, I can say a svara in the pasuk. I'm not going to change it because of my svara. Rav Shimon says the way I explain the pasuk, they'll tell me after halacha. I think the pasuk says it because you can differentiate. If two things you do A for B, they both look the same. I don't know which one is which. But if I know which one is which, the machshava doesn't make a difference. That's what it says. The Shimon does time in the call. Machshava doesn't mean kira pasuk achmona. Machshava you can differentiate, then it's possible. Machshava the minkra like pasuk achmona. Machshava that is minkra is the Torah is not paisa. That's what Shimon dashes, and here it's a big chiddush as we mentioned before. Because again, what's the idea? I would think the machshava in kachim is just the fact you have a machshava. You're thinking about something, you're ruining something. But comes here the Reb Shimon, it says no, has to be something that doesn't completely contradict what you're doing, and that's a chiddush over here, Reb Shimon. There's an important Rashi over here. Rashi here in the Sugya mentions that every time it says machshava is referring to a dibur. That Shitas Rashi, it's also Shitas Toises in Maseches Zvachim. Rashi brings a riot from Bo Metzio. We have it. Let me see if I find it. What? Lashon Machshava is Lav Davka. Where's Lashon? Let's see Lashon Rashi. It says if I can find it. I don't know what. I remember where I can't find it now. Rashi says, okay, maybe we'll see it later. But he says the idea of machshava. Here. Machshava de minkro. It's 4 lines down on the white line. It says Rashi. Machshava de minkro. Lakol shu mechasev lo machshava. If it's clear that he's lying, it's not machshava. So Rashi. Hach machshava de kochim hoitzoas dibur bepehu. He needs to verbalize it. Kedamim bo metzio akol v'apeh shelchev la machshava kemaise. If I don't have machshava, that's nothing. It's Toises and Zvachim as well. And here you have a machlekes, if the Medaik and the Rambam, that's the Mishnah Melech, they bring it over here in the Mesayis Hashas. He's Medaik and the Rambam holds the machshava is enough. And all the Rishonim, the Shal is also, if it's a machshava only, how do you know that he did it wrong? How can you detect it? That's another technical thing. If it's Oidos Baldin will be enough. I'm saying, but he wants to be another korban. How can you allow him to be chulin lazar? Just because he says it, which is edus. But if you said bepe, you hear it. There's different rayas to the Shitas Rashi and Taisus. Rashi learns whenever you have something, it has to be verbalized. If you only see it in your mind, not going to be saying it, and that's what it is. This may, yeah, that will be a problem to do it. That's what you have. The Gemara asks, "L'gabi the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim." How do you know if he's doing something wrong? So the Gemara says that they have a window and they listen to him and etc. What do you mean? Maybe he doesn't machshava. That's a riot to Rashi and Taisus. You have to actually verbalize it. And there may, it's interesting, the Biur Halacha brings the name of Yechezkel in a discussion. Do you have to do, there's a machlekes Shulchan Aruch in the Vilna Gaon, do you have to say a Birkas HaTorah on machshava, on Hiru, with Divrei Torah? The person just thinking and learning, does he have to say Birkas HaTorah or not? The Shulchan Aruch holds he does not. It's only Dibur. And the Vilna Gaon holds the machshava. So after that's the same machlekes, the same shayrish, do you go based on machshava or not? The Gemara now is going to go through the different limudim and different places where you see is ma'isa of nikorim or not. It's going to go into the next one. We're just going to see the first part and we'll continue with it tomorrow. Says the Gemara, someone takes oil soif and he did it in the top part, mishuchat soif. Now here comes the simon. And interesting enough, the Shita Mekubetza brings it over here on the side. Where does oil soif go? Where does it go? On the top of the mizbeach or the bottom part of the mizbeach? Oil soif. Oil soif goes to the top. What's the simin? Oilo with a lamet goes lemalo. And where does chata soif go? Lamato tes. Chatos with a tes. Lamato with a tes. Tes in the middle. That's the simin he brings. The Shita Mekubetza brings it over here. So me'ato oil soif shemol kolamalo mishu chata soif tirotze. If someone takes oil soif, it's supposed to be up. He does it up, but he has the wrong machshava. Should not ruin it because you see that's at the top. Says the Gemara, the chata soif lamata above. If it's chata, you do it on the bottom. Says the Gemara, to chata soif lamala milesa. What do you mean? There's no such thing as chata on top. If you do milika, you could do anywhere you want to the mizbech. Milika is the cutting of the neck of the bird. That can be done wherever you want. So you mean the fact you're doing it top doesn't show it's oil. Says, well, okay. So let's not focus on miliko. But what about Elisov? You squeeze the blood on top with the mice of chatos. That chatos has to be down the bottom. It's for sure Elisov. Because why? It should be down the bottom. Not only should do it in the bottom, he should do it hazah, not mitzvah. If you remember the Gemara in Mizvakim, how do you do oil saif? You squeeze the blood into the kir, into the wall. And how do you do chata saif? You throw the blood into the wall. So it should be different. It says the one of Gimel Dam Tab, Amrein, Dilma mitzvah the butter azoi, the omar mitzvah dom chomokom is be'ak sheru. Remember, in chata saif you have 3 stages. You have milika, then you have hazah, and then you have to squeeze it. Then you have to take out the blood from what's left over. So he's saying, yeah, maybe this is after hazah. So when you're doing mitzvah in the top with the oilo, someone could think it's the chatos. It's stage number 3. Stage number 3 is you're allowed to do it on top. So now a raya, you don't see clearly it's oilo. One more question over here says the Gemara. Chatas oif, she's a damu lemato shemoil. So what happens the opposite? He did chatas in the bottom, which is a moko of chatos. But he had in mind for oilo. Terot said the maseh mochich moleo the chatas oifi. This should be meratzah because it's clear chatos the oilo soifi lemalo avid lei umitzvah avid lei. You do it on top, and when not do a zo, you do meat, you do squeezing. Hachinami, you're right. And lefi sheina menachos doimus lezvachim kolmar lezvachim v'loy loifus. Meaning, right? Like Abi Oifis, also Rav Shimon will say sheima sem mochichim oleo. Let's look at Lashon Rashi with this will end. Rashi says that the third line below the Oifis, the bad the Oifis doimi are similar to Oifis. The Oifis olu l'shem chayva. Kod chatas oif she's a dam lamata shemas oif. And if I'm doing something which is clear with myself, according to this sheet and Rav Shimon, I go based on how his actions appear to be. And if his actions clearly mean to say one thing, it's an echanami, we won't have a problem of shaloi lishma. Well, this will end today's daf. Continue from here tomorrow. We'll continue from here. We'll see when. Beseder.